Welcome to this webinar on living a focusing life. We're going to explore some of the topics involved in living a focusing life. To start with, I want to just share with you a quote from Gene Genlin. It's probably one you're already familiar with. He says, "Every bad feeling is potential energy toward a more right way of being if you give it space to move toward its rightness." Now we can just read that and think, oh, how nice, that sounds so nice. But what if instead of just reading it, we bring our bodies in, take it slow, get the feel for what it says, but also get the feel for what it touches in you, how it matters to you. Let's take it slow. Every bad feeling is potential energy. Every bad feeling, no exceptions, every bad feeling is potential energy, which means it has potential to take us somewhere toward a more right way of being. Pausing and sensing, what does a more right way of being mean to you? Every bad feeling is potential energy toward a more right way of being. If, yeah, there's an if you give it space to move toward its rightness. And what does that mean? What does it mean to give a bad feeling space to move toward its rightness? How is it to pause and sense what comes inside with a quote by Eugene Genlin, who's the father of focusing, the grandfather of the focusing we do today? How is it to pause and let a quote come in? Teresa, how is it?
I'm finding it a very deeply emotional experience to have those words at this time. Very, very moving.
Very moving, deeply
and I
emotional.
just want to howl, but I'd like to stop the howl and let something else come in. But yeah, there it is.
Oh, okay. Okay. Something in you wants to howl.
Yeah.
Letting that be there without actually howling. Beautiful, my dear. Thank you so much. So we're here today to explore a number of different ways to bring focusing into daily life. And at the end of the webinar, we'll talk about the upcoming course called Living a Focusing Life. But first, I really want to give you some valuable support right here and now. There's a whole bunch of ways we can use focusing in daily life. I wrote a whole article called 10 Ways of Using Focusing in Daily Life. One of the 10 ways is being able to sense that something is wrong. It's a very powerful skill. And often, when I look back on my life and I go over the things that I regret, which unfortunately there are a few, often what I'm regretting are things that if only I had paused, if only I'd paused and checked in. How am I right now? How is this right now? I would have noticed something is wrong. Something is off. There's a story I tell in the article about a student of mine who was in his woodworking studio and he was about to start work on a cabinet. He was about to make his first cut in the wood. And he had measured twice, they say measure twice, cut once. He had measured twice. And still he had this uneasy feeling something is wrong. Now, he'd taken a focusing course, so he didn't push that feeling away. he measured again. And sure enough, at the third time he measured, there was something off and he needed to adjust the way the wood was cut. You know, you really can't change those things afterwards. So it's really great. When I got married for the second time, I wanted a very small wedding. I had my maid of honor, my husband had his, what do you call it, best man, and we had our parents, and that was it. That was all we wanted. We were going to have a party, big party later. Well, that morning, a friend of mine from a different city showed up unexpectedly, but so eager to help. She was a good friend of mine. She helped me buy shoes that I needed that morning. She said she'd come along and take photographs. So she was in the church with us taking photographs, but we didn't include her in the circle of people that were standing at the front of the church as part of the wedding. And I always regretted that. It wasn't a clear decision. I was just going by the previous idea I'd had, where it's just going to be just us and no one else. Later, I was hit by the uneasy feeling, how odd it felt for my friend Marcia taking photos to be in the back, outside the circle of warmth and blessing that we were giving to our wedding. I was so sorry. And I could tell, if only I'd paused and sensed what's needed here. If only my husband and I had paused together, it would have been so different. So pausing is often what we need in daily life, but we need something else too to be able to tell that something is wrong. And that is a kind of trust in our own ability to feel what's right and what's wrong. It takes us back to Gentleman's quote, really. Every bad feeling is potential energy toward a more right way of being. There is such a thing as a more right way of being that we can find. When we've gone through difficult times in our lives, especially when we were very young, that ability to tell what's right and what's wrong goes underground. We don't lose it. I don't believe we ever lose that ability. But it's like when alarm goes off so often, we can't tell anymore. So as you recover through doing lots of careful and gentle inner focusing, do some healing of those younger selves that you carry with you from those earlier times. What gets easier and easier is to be able to sense the rightness and the wrongness that are going on in your life. So decisions was one thing I wanted to talk with you about today. In every life, we make so many decisions. There are those big decisions that have to do with where we're living, who we're in relationship with, and what's our work. But then there's so many moment by moment decisions. Shall I go on that vacation? Where shall I go on vacation? Shall I go to a restaurant? Shall I go to a movie? We're talking about decisions that have been difficult for me in the last few years because of the pandemic, but there are other kinds of decisions as well. Oh, another one I talk about in my article is picking a gift for somebody. I used to be so terrible at picking gifts for people, and I didn't like doing it. I would give them gift certificates instead. But I decided one day to try using focusing. And it worked amazingly. How do you use focusing to choose a fitting gift for somebody who you know? Well, it probably involves partly getting a felt sense of the person, how you're hoping they'll feel when they get it. Your body knows how to sum up social appropriateness. Like even if you love somebody, you probably wouldn't give them a house for their birthday so that some kind of rightness about the occasion and what you give. And I've gotten so by doing this, by kind of tuning into my inner sense of rightness about this person and the occasion. Sometimes even particular stores pop into my mind. Like, I don't know yet what I want to get that person, but it'll probably be at that store, that particular store. So nice. Why don't we do an exercise? Let me take you through an exercise on using focusing with a decision. And pausing right now, just to sense, what is a decision coming up, something coming up, even a very small one. Hey, it could even be what you're going to have for dinner tonight or at your next meal, whenever that is, or what you'll do this weekend. Or what is something you're not sure about right now? Let's just pause and pick something like that and try out using focusing with it, okay? Have you got one? All right. So inviting you to settle into your body right now. Feel your body here and now. Feel your body supported. So you're feeling your feet, your seat, your back, whatever is in contact with what you're sitting on. Just allowing yourself to rest into that support. And if it feels like there's something in the way, just being present in your own body, taking note of that. Might there be something that's making it hard to just be present right now? Using the language something in me to acknowledge whatever that is. I'm sensing something in me. Having a hard time just settling in and being present right now. And I'm saying hello to that. Great. Okay, let's keep going. Taking some time to feel your breathing. And letting your awareness come inward, sensing in that inner area that includes your throat, your chest, stomach, belly area. And remembering that little decision that's coming up pretty soon in the future. And letting it come down into your body. Of course, about any decision, there are thoughts. And let's follow the practice for now of just letting those thoughts be there, but not investing in them, right? Just coming down into the body. So I'd like to get a feel of that decision. I'd like to get a feel for what would be right. What would be right for me and for others in that situation. And then pause. I'd like to get a feel for what would be right for me and others. So everybody's who's involved, what would fit, what would feel right. And give it some time because we know that in focusing things don't happen instantly. They take some time. Like to get a feel for what would be right. And also let it surprise you. Let it not make sense. What? Where does that come from? Well, just let it come. Now, if you still feel like there's an either or here, I don't know if it's right to go out or stay home. I don't know if it's right to see that friend or that friend. Okay. You still feel like there's an either or. Take one of those sides and bring it in. What about if I do this one? How does that feel inside? And then take the other one and bring that in. How does that side feel? I'm leaving spaces because this can take a while. You might already feel that you need a bit longer than this. But we're going to go on. And whatever did come to you, bring it back inside one more time and check. Does this feel right? And every time you do this, with even a very little decision, you're exercising, you're cultivating your ability to sense what feels right. Very nice. Beautiful. So we're coming back, thanking your body, letting your awareness expand so you can feel the room around you again. Feeling your body present in the room you're in, letting your eyes come open. Hey, what did you notice about that process? Is this something you already do with your decisions? Is there something new about it? Did something surprise you? Does it bring questions? Eve writes, it feels good to pause with each alternative. Great. Yeah. Michael writes, I noticed some clarity about the decision when I gave it focusing space. Well, that's great. So let's talk a bit more about different ways we can use focusing in daily life. Another one that's important. Oh, and I'm just going to pause to read what Lily wrote in the chat. It's something I've been doing without really noticing it, and I appreciated moving through the process. I'm closer to sensing what's right. Oh, isn't that nice? You know, one of the things about focusing is we understand about this closer, because if we're just operating from a kind of logical mind, it says, well, I haven't made the decision yet, so this has not been a successful experience. But we can feel closer when we're attuned to that felt sense level. Well, another thing I said we do today is communicate clearly in relationships. That's one of the tough ones I find. And yet, something we really need, like relationships with people in your family, people you see every day, like coworkers, people you live with. Those can be some of the toughest relationships in terms of emotional stress if they don't go well. And to feel like you're keeping your own presence, your own center, without getting sort of swept away by being taken over by the other person's wishes and needs. Such an important thing to do. The ability to sense how I am, even while you're actually talking to another person, is so valuable to develop. It took me quite a while, I would say years, once I started doing focusing. If I was in the presence of another person, but it was my focusing turn, and they were just there to be my companion, I could sense how I am. But if I was in a conversation with someone, we were going back and forth. One of the most difficult things was to notice how I am in that circumstance. It wasn't easy in my family. It's something that developed over time. And in the article 10 Ways, one of the things that I realized is that I have a hard time when people ask me for something, when I feel like there's a request or a demand even coming toward me. And by the way, nonviolent communication, the work of Marshall Rosenberg, makes a beautiful distinction between requests and demands. He says it's a demand. You realize you've actually made a demand of the other person if it's not okay with you for them to say no. And you realize you've made a request if you're open to any kind of response that they have. Once I learned this, and I learned this almost the same year that I first learned focusing, it was so wonderful because I realized whether people intended it or not, I was hearing a lot of things people asked of me as if they were demands, as if I didn't really have a choice to say yes or no. It's so nice to separate the two. In other words, say back to the person, either literally say it back, or at least in your own mind, say it back. So what you're asking me is if I would be on your committee and take notes at every meeting. And you would like that if I would do that. And let me see if that's something that fits for me. So separating, that's what they want. And here, now that I've understood that, here's what I'm willing to do. Do you see what I mean? And growing up in my family, there was almost no separation. I couldn't feel the difference between the request coming at me and my own power to say yes or no. It was like when it's requested, I'm supposed to say yes. I find myself saying yes. That was a tough way to live. I was so grateful when that started to change. When I started to be able to feel that separation, think that's what you want. And like another thing that happened before I learned how to do this is that I have to get mad at the other person before I could say no. Like, how dare you ask me that? No. Which isn't really something that contributes to the relationship either. It was so nice when I realized they get to ask me, they get to want that, and then I get to check whether I want to do it or not. That was wonderful. So that's one of the things that can come up in relationships. Do any of you want to say in the chat or speak up and let us know what are some of the examples of wanting to be able to be present with yourself when communicating in relationships? When you have a difficult conversation to have with somebody, it can help to be in touch with how you feel about it and communicate some of the feelings. Like, I'm feeling a bit nervous right now, and so on. There's an article by my friend Helene Brenner called 9 Steps to Having a Successful Difficult Conversation. It's really clear from her article how important focusing in the moment is to being able to have a difficult conversation. So she says, take it slow. Sit across from your partner and really look at them. Take a few deep breaths. If you feel nervous, it's okay. Let yourself feel it. And it's probably okay or even helpful to tell your partner you're nervous. So there's a quality of awareness of how you're feeling while you're connecting with the other, and a willingness to be vulnerable by saying how you're feeling. Now, of course, if it doesn't feel safe to do that, you wouldn't do it. And being able to tell whether something's safe or not is another way we're using our inner practice of sensing, even in daily life. Is this a place where I can say something vulnerable, like I'm feeling a bit nervous to be talking to you right now, but I'm hoping it goes well, our conversation? Or maybe I don't feel safe to say that. Or maybe something in me doesn't feel safe to say that, and I need to give some inner tending to the something in me that's having a hard time. Lily writes in the chat, I really want to be more present when I'm with my adult children. Yeah. So I think these tips that I'm sharing from Helene's article about connecting with yourself and connecting with the other through eye contact, through breathing, through having a kind of open posture, noticing how is my posture when I'm with this person? Am I protected and covered up, or am I letting myself have an open posture? And if I'm protected and covered up, does that mean there's something in me that needs some attention? Teresa writes in the chat, it's when I want to say what's really on my mind. There's something difficult, Teresa, sometimes about saying what's really on your mind. Maybe what's difficult about it is that you wouldn't want it to sound like you're criticizing the other person. That's a whole interesting conversation, because I've not really found it very successful to ever criticize another person. They tend to get defensive. Sometimes people get defensive even when I didn't think I was criticizing them at all. And then if I notice that, I may say, oh, it sounds like you might have thought I was criticizing you, but you know what? I really didn't mean to. Can I give somebody feedback on their behavior without, well, at least lowering the possibility that I'll sound criticizing to them? It usually works best if I share the impact on me. I came into the kitchen this morning and I found the carton of milk left out on the counter, and I felt kind of scared and worried because I love having milk in my coffee in the morning, and I was scared that this milk was going to be curdled, and it wasn't. And I don't know if it was you that left the milk out, but if it was, is there any way I can help you remember to put it away in the future? That's one way we could say it. Someone's writing in the chat, when I know that X did something, and they often deny things that they do. Ooh, that's a tough one. Something in me feels powerless to start a conversation that's going to have all this denial at the beginning. You know, even before I read the rest of the chat, I have a feeling that that denial comes from that defensiveness I was just talking about. Nobody likes to feel criticized. And so there's all this stuff that comes up. I didn't do that, is one way. Another thing is, well, you do it too. What we understand about that is that it's a part of the person that's getting triggered by painful situations that remind them of probably even more painful situations where they felt judged and criticized. The person in the chat writes, I could start by saying something in me believes you did this and is upset. Well, you know what I'd suggest is that you start by seeing if you can get some agreement on whether it happened. My example of the milk carton left out, found the milk carton left out, and I'm looking, I can't remember if I did that myself or might it have been you. See if you can find some agreement on whether it got left out by that person. It still might be a tough one. Now, before we go on to more about focusing in daily life, I'd like to take this opportunity to talk about the class that's coming up. I know a number of you are interested and probably want to know more about how that class will work. So let's do that for a while. So this class is called Living a Focusing Life. And we're going to dive deeper into key issues like action blocks and decisions and build more confidence as a focusing partner. So it's about living a focusing life in many of the ways we've talked about today. It's also more practice in focusing partnership. It's also being better at focusing alone. There's the whole thing about living your life from self in presence more and more. That means that you don't get as defensive. You don't feel triggered as much by things that happen. When you do feel triggered by things that happen, you have a way to turn toward the part of you that got triggered and do some processing with that. And the class is about gaining confidence and ability in using focusing to make decisions, release blocks, and go after your heart's desire. And we'll do all of that. Yeah, and bringing focusing to issues in your relationships too. So it's an 18-week course. It meets from 3 to 5 Mondays Pacific time, which it's the same, starts at the same time this webinar started today. It's pretty much an every other week schedule. That's one way that we can have a spaciousness, not have to be meeting every week. Life's so busy these days, it almost feels like things that are every week are a little bit too much. So it's stretched out, spread out. Starts September 19th. The last day to register is September 12th. It's about 4 weeks from now. And this course, Living a Focusing Life, includes partnerships, focusing partnerships with other people in the course. That's not an absolute requirement. If you'd prefer to take the course and not do the partnerships, that's okay with me. Or you can find somebody in the course that you'd like to partner with every week or every time we meet instead of changing each time. Or you might even keep a focusing partner you have who's not taking the course, but still do the course exercises with that person. Lots of flexible ways to do that partnership. And some people really like being in a partnership mix where you have a different person every few weeks. Every time we meet, it says each week here, but it's not each week, it's each meeting. Each meeting, there's a handout with new exercises, and I'm the teacher for 16 of the meetings anyway. Barbara McGavin, the great Barbara McGavin, will be a teacher for 2 meetings. And her topic will be creativity, which she's awfully good at, but she rarely gets a chance to teach it. So it's really a treasure. The prerequisite for this course is that you need to have had our focusing training, Path to Lasting Change, parts 1 and 2, or you had levels 1 through 4, or you had the equivalent to those from another focusing teacher. And if you're not sure if your focusing training is equivalent, you can just ask me. This is my email address, ann@focusingresources.com. Questions about the course before we go on to another Living a Focusing Life topic and another Gendlin quote. Hope is here, and Hope's going to be an assistant in the course. If you want to say anything, Hope, you're very welcome.
I am so excited to, I should turn on my picture, but I'm just so excited to be a part of this program, and I can't wait for all of the newnesses and revelations that show up for me and all of us as we go through this together.
Thank you. I'm excited too. I want to say to you and everybody that I created this course out of a focusing question, what would be the most fun for me to teach? And so that's what you're getting is and having fun. Thank you so much, Hope. And if there's nothing more right now, let's talk about another topic. You know, another thing I wanted us to explore today together is knowing what you want, not just knowing what you want, but making a space where it's okay to want. And one thing I've discovered in working with wanting over the years is that many people have wounds around wanting. We've grown up in atmospheres where you weren't supposed to want, or if people around you found out that you were wanting something, then that was the thing you couldn't have. So I'm sad about that. And there are processes that we can do to begin to heal the wounds that we've had around wanting. Let's do a little exercise right now to give you an example of what I mean. So let's take a little time to sense in your body. Well, first to sense your whole body here and now. Resting into the support that's here. Feeling your breathing. And letting your awareness come inward. And inside your body, ask yourself, what is something that I want? Notice what happens. Now, it could be something very small and ordinary. There might be something you want to eat right now or drink. You might want a nice conversation with a good friend who comes to mind. You might want a healthy life. So whatever came is good. Whatever came is okay. It's welcome. What's something that I want? Give yourself a little more time. In fact, if a want doesn't come up right away, that's kind of interesting, isn't it? I mean, you might be in that lovely Buddhist state of wanting nothing. That would be okay. But it might also be that there's something in you that finds wanting a bit painful. Is it okay to want? Let's take a step back. Is it okay to enjoy? You're sitting here right now. I invited you to feel the contact of your body and what you're sitting on. Is it okay to enjoy the contact of your body and what you're sitting on? Just to savor it, to rest in it. Do you enjoy it? Maybe you don't if you have body pain or discomfort right now. So let's get interested in whether it's okay to enjoy and whether it's okay to want. And there's no right or wrong answer to that. If it's not okay to want, cool. But now we have something to turn toward. something to explore, something to get to know better. Maybe it's okay to want some things, but not other things. Maybe it's okay to want things we can get for ourselves, but not okay to want things that require other people to cooperate. That would be interesting. We're just pausing to notice. Is there something I want? And is it okay to want that? Notice if there's something you want and you don't know whether you can get it. Do you have a want like that? Something you want and you don't know whether you can get it? Sometimes that's the hardest kind of want to make room for inside. I want this, but I don't know whether I can get it. I don't know how. Is it okay to have a want even though you don't know how or if you'll ever get it? And is there an inner sense of allowing that wanting to be there? The wanting itself can have a life inside you, even if you don't know if you'll ever get it. Notice how that feels, or if it doesn't feel possible, notice that. And thanking your body. And we're coming back, feeling the room around you, letting your eyes come comfortably open. Just a little bit about allowing wanting. How was that? Do you want to tell us what you noticed or what came around wanting and allowing it? Takes a while to write, so if somebody's writing in the chat, I don't know. I don't have those 3 little dots that happen on your smartphone when somebody's writing to you. Oh, there's Lily. I love sensing how wonderful it feels to allow wanting, even if I may never get what I want. Yay! I'm so glad that helped, that you love that. Nice. Great. Today we've talked about a number of ways of using focusing in daily life. We've had a practice focusing with a decision, a practice focusing with wanting, shared a resource about 10 ways to use focusing in daily life, and a resource about having difficult conversations with people in your life. And another thing we've done is we spent time at the very beginning with a quote from Jean Genlin. Now, in the course, Living a Focusing Life, we're going to have a quote from Jean Genlin every time we meet. That's a pretty short one like these. I'm going to show you. I'm going to share another quote from Genlin with you right now. And it is a lovely process, I find, to spend time with the kinds of things that Genlin thought and wrote, because they really are interpenetrated with the spirit of focusing. So here is my second quote from Genlin today. I'm going to read it slowly. And this is another opportunity to take your time and just let in the feel of this. Experience is a myriad richness. We think more than we can say. We feel more than we can think. We live more than we can feel. And there is much more still. We think more than we can say. We feel more than we can think. We live more than we can feel. And there's much more still. That quote makes me very happy. And for me, it points to the essence of focusing, which is there is more to be experienced and felt than all the things we've already thought and said, and all the things that anybody else has ever thought and said. In our bodies, there is more than that. So, hope you enjoyed exploring this with me today. I've certainly enjoyed exploring it with you. Thanks, Michael. Glad you were here. Thank you, Lily. Thank you, Eve, Janet, Julie, everybody, Teresa, everybody who participated. Thank you so much. Lovely to be with you. Take care. Keep in touch. Bye for now.